Hello everyone and welcome to a new video dedicated to our beloved Snoopy and the world of Peanuts. Patty and Shermie are the stars of this hilarious Peanuts strip published on December 27, 1950. In 4 panels, Charles Schulz creates a brief exchange that culminates in a conclusion both logical and surreal. Patty rejects Shermie's marriage proposal with an unassailable reason. She doesn't know him well enough to accept such a proposal. Schulz masterfully plays with the paradox of 2 children discussing a typically adult subject, appending all expectations with a final line that shatters any pretense of seriousness. The key element of this strip is the contrast between the innocence of the children and the seriousness with which they tackle complex topics. This narrative device is one Schulz would often use in Peanuts, giving his characters lines of disarming wisdom or, conversely, showcasing a logic so direct that it becomes comical. The concept of marriage, a staple of adult relationships, becomes a verbal game here, with Patty's seemingly obvious response completely crushing Shermie's hopes. The strip works perfectly due to the simplicity of the artwork and the clarity of the scene. The characters are few, the setting minimal, but the focus is entirely on the dialogue. This is one of the first examples of Schulz's ability to turn an ordinary situation into a humorous and memorable moment. Furthermore, the interaction between Patty and Shermie shows how, in the early strips, Schulz maintained a more open dynamic between characters, whereas over time, his focus would shift more to Charlie Brown and his inner world. In the first vignette, Patty takes center stage, dominating the scene with her confidence. With a determined expression and a hand gesture that emphasizes her firmness, she delivers an unexpected line: she cannot marry Shermie. This seemingly simple detail is actually the heart of the strip's humor. The very fact that 2 children are discussing marriage already creates a surreal and ironic effect, but it's Patty's serious tone that makes the line even funnier. It almost seems like she's addressing a matter of great importance, as if her decision is the result of deep reflection, which amplifies the contrast between the character's young age and the gravity of her statement. Shermie, in contrast, remains impassive. He doesn't react initially with surprise or shock, but listens attentively. His silence and neutral expression perfectly balance the emphasis Patty places on her words, reinforcing the comedic effect of the scene. This dynamic is a perfect example of Schulz's narrative style, where he conveys humor and character with the bare minimum. There are no elaborate backgrounds or unnecessary details. The scene stands entirely on the dialogue and the subtle interaction between the characters. Schulz avoids exaggerated expressions or cartoonish movements, allowing the words and their contrast with the situation to create the comedic impact. In the second vignette, Shermie immediately reacts with a question, showing a spontaneous and direct interest. His face expresses genuine curiosity, with attentive eyes and his body slightly leaning forward, as if he wants to get closer to Patty to seek a clearer answer. There's no trace of offense or disappointment in his words, just a desire to understand the situation better. Patty responds with flawless logic and absolute rationality. She doesn't know Shermie well enough. Her statement comes across as a fundamental principle to respect before making any such important decision. Patty's tone is so serious and thoughtful that it might seem like an adult conversation, but in reality, it's just 2 children playfully mocking an adult concept with their innocence. The joke is perfect precisely because of its seriousness, which contrasts humorously with the topic at hand. This narrative choice is significant because it highlights the natural way children approach social interactions. While an adult might feel embarrassed, hurt, or even defensive in response to rejection, Shermie accepts it as a simple fact, without attaching any emotional implications. For him, it's not a personal judgment, but something that simply needs an explanation. Schulz conveys this nuance with extreme simplicity, using just a few visual details and essential lines of dialogue. Shermie's spontaneous question also reflects the realism with which Schulz builds his stories. In Peanuts, children often behave in a logical and direct manner, without the filters and complexities of adulthood. This authenticity is one of the elements that makes the strips so deep and universal. In their apparent simplicity, they manage to reveal broader truths about human nature and how we face the world around us. In the third vignette, Shermie, now visibly annoyed with an expression that mixes disappointment and disbelief, directs a blunt and frustrated question at Patty. Well, what do you expect? His tone clearly expresses a mix of irritation and dismay, indicating that Shermie is now resigned to the situation but at the same time unable to understand why Patty is rejecting him. The question almost comes across as an accusation, as if he's trying to justify his desire to marry her with a logic that doesn't seem to have an answer. In this moment, Shermie appears to question the entire course of events, as if he believes there is something obvious or inevitable about his proposal. Patty remains silent, just listening to him. Schultz's brilliance lies in how he makes this line not only believable but also deeply funny, as it highlights the paradox of the situation. Two children speak with the same seriousness an adult might use when discussing a relationship, yet the entire exchange is based on a fundamental misunderstanding. The very idea that a child could be concerned with the duration of a relationship before making such a big decision like marriage is, by definition, absurd. This contrast between the incredible seriousness of the children and the absurdity of the topic is what makes the situation comically improbable, yet still extremely real within their perception of the world. In this way, Schultz plays with the absurd, making the line not just a humorous reflection, but also a subtle critique of adult expectations placed on children. In the final vignette, the perfect conclusion arrives to close the small comedic drama of this strip. Shermie, with complete naturalness, responds by saying that he has only been alive for a few years. This line, simple and direct, not only answers the question spontaneously, but also shuts down any possibility of further discussion, leaving Patty speechless and ridiculing the entire situation. The brilliance of Schultz's humor lies in his ability to transform what could be a banal situation into a moment of pure comedy. He does this through a shift in perspective, presenting a truth that, though simple, is completely unexpected. The reader laughs not only because of the absurdity of the scene, but also because of the clever, childlike logic with which Shermie, in his innocence, resolves the conversation. The humor here doesn't stem from wordplay or a misunderstanding, but from the ability to see the world with fresh, direct eyes as a child would. It's a type of humor that arises from the simplicity of responses, from the ability to observe life from a surprising perspective where even the absurd makes sense. This is a distinctive trait of Peanuts. The characters, though living in a world that sometimes seems irrational, always manage to find a logical and coherent solution, showing that, in the end, every situation, no matter how improbable, can be resolved with a clear and sincere viewpoint. The reader thus finds themselves laughing not only at the immediate comedic element, but also at the depth behind the simplicity of the characters' responses. The irony of this strip lies in its immediacy. Schultz doesn't need complex devices to create a comedic situation. Everything is based on the way the characters see the world. The mind of a child is direct, unencumbered by layers of complexity, and because of this, it often uncovers profound truths with disarming innocence. The contrast between the way adults talk about marriage and how two children approach it creates an irresistibly comic effect. This strip is a perfect example of how Schultz, even in the early years of Peanuts, already mastered the timing of a punchline. The dialogue builds progressively until a finale that shatters any expectation. This type of comedy, based on intelligence and simplicity, is one of the reasons Peanuts became so iconic. While Patty and Shermie aren't among the most memorable characters in the series, in this scene they deliver a perfect gag that still works today due to its immediacy and universality.
If you enjoyed yourselves, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and activate the little bell to stay updated, and see you next friends.